I'd like to welcome all of you who have come to the memory sharing session. You notice it's me and others. Each church was requested to get somebody that would be able to answer questions from the audience about the history of their particular church. They ask if I would, and I said, oh, sure, I'd love to. I'm Bill Savage, and I was born and raised in the St. Cloud Church. My grandfather, Thomas Savage, preached there. My dad, Thomas Savage, preached there, and my uncle, John Savage, preached there. And my brother-in-law, Bob C. did for a while. So I'm familiar with that church. I have memories of the history of that. Memories of Dad coming down from the pulpit, taking me by the hand out in the room behind the pulpit and giving me a spanking and sending me back to sit down and pay attention. Quiet. I remember that well. Happened only a few times though. My mother was born and raised in Eden Valley. I have a lot of relatives from there, and I am familiar with a lot of people from there. I preached for 1 year when I was going to college over in the Greytown Church, and so I'm familiar somewhat with that church. My dad had preached there for a while prior to my preaching there, and so I had ridden over there with him, so I knew quite a bit about the church and its attendants and families. And there were times when I was preaching over in Wisconsin where I'd preach there in the morning and come back, and then the wasn't newly founded really at that time, but the Minneapolis church had rented a Baptist church down in South Minneapolis, so they had evening services there, and that church was supported by pastors who would drive from wherever they lived in Minnesota or Northern Illinois or whoever. They would drive down and speak there. And so occasionally I was tapped to speak at the Minneapolis church, and then got married, and primarily was out of the St. Cloud area, and then eventually moved down to cities and started actively being in the Minneapolis church. So I'm here to answer questions as best I can. I forgot my hearing aid at the cabin when I left this morning in a hurry. So if I can't hear your questions, or if I want to ignore you, I'll pretend I don't. Please, someone else, because we have representatives here from all the churches, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that can answer the questions a lot better than me. Now, Gay this morning referenced this book. I have a copy of that, and I have my name and address in it. So if any of you want to borrow it, take it home, copy it, or do anything with it, feel free, as long as you send it back to me. I enjoy having it. And it tells the history of all the churches and truly points out that this is the 150th anniversary of the first conference that our church had. Other than that, I'm here to answer questions. All of us are here to answer questions and out there. So who would like to throw out the first question? Specifically, I can answer questions on the Minneapolis church. If you want, I can go through a quick synopsis of it first, or I can, oops, I'm not supposed to hold it down there. I hit the button to detach the cord and it makes sounds. Yes?
Bill, what's your youngest remembrance of your dad's ministry?
How old? How young? My youngest? I remember that my dad enjoyed preaching. Uh, there were, when I was young, very young, there were groups of Church of God, quote unquote, people, like at Lester Prairie, um, Greytown, outside of St. Cloud, there were a couple of schools that groups used to meet in. And my recollection of it is getting in the old 37 Chevy and driving through and around potholes and dirt roads and getting to a church someplace. And my dad would then preach there. And then we'd be invited out for lunch at the home of somebody who was there. And then he'd drive back. Otherwise, he'd drive out there in the evenings and preach there. That's the youngest I recall my dad preaching. I remember my sister Ruth, my oldest sister, went forward to be baptized in a little church outside of St. Cloud, on the east side of St. Cloud one evening. They had gas lights. You had to come and light the gas lights all around. And my sister Ruth went forward there and was baptized. She married John Lewis. They were both tragically killed when she was 46 in a car accident. A drunk driver turned right in front of them and they totaled out. She and her husband. Anyway, good question.
So how many churches from the beginning that are no longer here now?
Well, I don't know all of them that were no longer here now, but I do know that when I was growing up, I obviously was in the St. Cloud Church. There was an Eden Valley Church, a Litchfield Church, a Hector Church. Who did I miss? Ken? What were the churches that when we were growing up? It was,
Scott's.
well, I was asking Ken because he's the one I grew up with.
Ken isn't here, that's who knows about.
We had, I remember the Litchfield Hector ones you mentioned, Eden Valley, St. Cloud.
Yeah,
Those were four of them. Minneapolis, I remember it met in the evening.
right. They started out in 1944. They got a bunch of people together. Who was it? John Denchfield was the one who started organizing that back in '44. And then they met at homes for a while, and then they met in the YMCA for many years. And then in the church on the south end of the cities.
Didn't they meet on Sunday nights?
They met Sunday, well, they met during the day, but it was Sunday nights when they were in the church that they rented.
Because I remember the pastor in Litchfield would drive down to Minneapolis in the evening. That's what this is out there.
Yeah, they would do that. So, yeah, and then the church ended up buying a parcel of land up in Brooklyn Park and built a church on it, and then a parsonage. And,
Was it Brooklyn Center first?
yeah, it was Brooklyn Center, excuse me, yes.
What year was that? Did they construct that church?
I believe it was about they purchased the land in '61, and they were there starting in '64. That was when they had the first regular meetings there in their own church.
Don Needham, pastor there.
Yeah.
Who were some before Don?
Well, let's see once. Richard Dick was the first full-time pastor that we had. And after that, it was Don Needham. Becky, and Steve and Joyce Bolthouse, and then Mylan Hall, and then he passed away, and then Rex Shaw came in for a while. And then Sid Kirkpatrick came, and he's the one who tided us over to our new location in Brooklyn Park at Pine Grove Bible Church, where we are now.
I have a question. How many churches or parking churches have been built by the St. Cloud furnishing owner?
Well, the whole campgrounds here was. I don't know, I think that the parsonage in St. Cloud was, for sure. But I remember going out and helping tear the boards off and take the decking off and ripping it into 2x4s. And most of the camp buildings here are built with railroad lumber. It could have been. It was free lumber. All you had to do is have a crew show up with nail pullers and pull the nails off the boards, and so they didn't split when you took them off the side of the boxcar, and then throw them on a trailer or something, and away you'd go.
I think that's how the original great house was.
I'm not sure, but it could have been.
I remember some of that.
Yeah, I had a two. Dad had a saw. He had I think it was a 10-horse Wisconsin engine rigged up to a saw, and he would rip the 2x6 tongue and groove decking into 2x4s. And he'd start pushing it through, and I'd stand at the other end and take it and stack it up and be back to grab the next one coming through. Running through one way to get the tongue off, and then the other way to get the groove off. We're left with a 2x4.
I always thought that was a great business for the church to have. The availability of that.
Right. And I remember,
How many people were in most of the churches back then?
50 to 60, I think, in most of them. Greytown, I think, was maybe 30 or 35. Eden Valley was a little bigger.
When did numbers start going down?
They went up in most of them. I don't know. Greytown, when did Greytown start diminishing in its...
Mid-70s. In the late 70s.
late 70s, it started going downhill. Yeah, the originals get older and the young ones move away. I'm one of the old ones. So any other questions about Minneapolis? Right now, the Minneapolis church, which is, it was a bunch of transients that, like myself, that used to go to another church and moved down in the cities area. And we have a lot of familiar names of people that are current attendees who were originally from other churches, like Gasper and Bormus and Savage, and Joe and Thea Goldberg were some that were from the area of where the church was located, and their family is nicely represented in our congregation now. And we used to have the Rademachers that were there for a while, Mary and Dave Otto. Of course, they came from Eden Valley Church. And so we have a lot of people that have familiar names around the state, but relocated. Kirkpatrick. Well, if that's all the question, no. Like I say, I do have this history book, and I found it very interesting, mainly because my family is represented in it. And it's just interesting to read the history of the churches. And so, if you, like I say, if you want to borrow it, feel free to grab it afterwards. And when you're done, pass it on to somebody else, as long as they end up sending it back to me, or give it to someone who goes to Pine Grove, like Paula or Amy or Todd, anybody. What? Somebody else who makes snide remarks. Remember, I said I have my hearing aid out. I don't do well. My right ear is not bad, but the left one. Woke up one morning a few years back, and for a while I was stone deaf in it. By the time I got in to see a specialist, I had about 20% of it back, and that's where it stayed. And the worst thing about it is I sit in my recliner at home. We have a lampstand, a couch, and my wife sits at the other end of the couch. And the TV is over on this side, about half the distance that my wife is from me. And so guess which I hear better? Not a good thing. So I need the hearing aid at home. What? Shut the TV up? She controls the TV, not me. I suppose I could sit at the kitchen table, it'd be closer to her. But anyway, no. Chairs are much more comfortable than the table. Anyway,
You think that Don Needham provided that, or-
Don Needham? Yeah, he's around. I've run into him a few times.
Where's the line between you and him? I mean, like, you mentioned his name, he's got to be close to married or someplace.
No, he's much younger than me.
He's younger?
Yeah, he married Becky. How old is Becky?
At 1979, he went to work at a church planting in Colorado Springs and stayed in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
They continued to live there. I see Don fairly frequently. I'm sure Ted and Paul are close contact. Don grew up in Louisiana, and he's a huge LSU fan, and they're all in the College World Series. Don is a big football player in the College World Series.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Don and Becky, I think, were the ones there. I'm 84, so I think he and they were there when I started going regularly there.
Are you now the oldest guy at Pine Grove?
Oldest guy? Yes. Yes.
The older lady?
Barb Scott.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I'm married 84, so just a kid. I just act like one. I always tell my grandchildren when I have a birthday, I have to get a year older, but I don't have to grow up. Any other questions about Pine Grove or any of the other churches? We have a lot of people here from each of those churches, and they can sure answer the questions. And if they want to come up and grab the mic, they can. What was that question?
We're planning to move Pine Grove.
No. No. I was going to say that the trees are dying, but the church is going to stay there and still be called that unless the bonfire to get rid of the trees does something.
That sounds sad.
Well, it's not better than that.
Anyone from, say, Eden Valley would like to speak a little bit about their history?
Were they the first church in Minnesota or who was?
No, Eden Lake, I think, was,
And then actually for non, that's what they said.
yeah, that's what Gay said this morning. Yes, we used to have churches all around the place. Bergen Township, Mora, up at Eden Lake, and other places, but yeah, Lester Prairie, yeah.
Kind of an interesting fact to me, not all the great members. There's been a lot of different pastors in Minnesota. I remember when I was a boy, Delbert Burton Jones, or Hector, Ellsworth, Drew Mouse, were in Eden Valley and Emeryville, Minnesota. And those, there were three sisters. So it was very nice because they had been scattered around the country, different pastors. For a number of years, they had family, close because all three of those pastors of those churches were married to Sister Martha Mason family. Well, Mary was brother than June and Bernie were Mason. So it was a nice little time for them to have that family.
Right, that is good. Yeah, that is good. Looking back at other churches, so I don't know. I know my. What?
Do you remember when they used to be YMCA?
I never met when they were at the YMCA in Minneapolis. Well, originally when they met there. Lorraine Gasper was one of the original members of that congregation, yes. When Nita and Don Needham was there is when I started. It was right after What's-Her-Face up here in the first row or second row was born. I told my wife that the kids need to be brought up in church. And we used to go up to the cabin a lot, but we ended up, I prevailed and brought my children to well, it was Faith Community first. And
How do you tell them you saw the little girls' dresses when they go to church?
Well, not so that it could, but it is hard.
And you walk in church?
yeah, that story, my wife had wanted a electric, sewing machine for our wedding, and so my mother said she would buy one because my mother had a good friend who sold Nikki Elnitz. And when she said to my wife that she'd buy us one of those, my wife said, no, my mother has a singer, we want a singer. Well, the singer was right across from the Nikki Elnitz store, so my mother had to sneak in there to buy the sewing machine my wife wanted. And she doesn't sew, she didn't sew. And so she used to play bridge with ladies. And so one day she went off to play bridge, and I'd been spending time reading the How to Sew book, and the instructions of the machine. And she'd been looking for this, I don't know what they call them, it was like a dress skirt. The first ones that come out with a skirt actually was like pants, and because she was teaching at the time. And so she left, and I got the material out and cut it out, and sewed it together, and had it all ready for her to try on for hemming it when she came home. And of course, when she left to go, she'd always leave a list of things that she wanted me to do while she was gone. She got home and, what have you been doing? There's nothing crossed off the list. So I invited her upstairs to the bedroom where the sewing machine was, and I showed it to her so she could try it on. And have it. And after that, I think she requested me to make skirts and dresses for her. And then I'd talk to the secretaries at work about sewing, and one of them had this neat pattern. You could vary it all over the place. I think I must have made 4 or 5 iterations of that dress for my wife. And of course, we'd take Christmas card pictures with our kids, and I'd make little dresses for them to wear.
Last month he did my mending for a pair of pants and a skirt and a stuffed animal.
And when she had buttons that stuff would fall off, she'd tell her friends, I'll take this home and have my daddy fix it. Me and your mother. No, my daddy does the sewing.
And you know what?
You're just a renaissance.
You do what needs to be done. And I was
So what
going to,
else did they do for like outreach? Because I know the St. Cloud Church, we saw, we were looking at some mission stuff, and the St. Cloud stuff, they were, a lot of the women there, they would take, books or literature to the libraries to put it in, or they take stuff to, where you leave them lay on a table to try to get our distinctive biblical truths out. What did other churches do, or did they just sit there with their families?
anybody like to answer that from their church?
When I was a kid, I remember that brothers Stan and sister Penny Ross took a mission trip to India, and they came back to different conference and told everybody about it. And they sold little Indian bangle bracelets. I think they were like $5, which back then was like. And I got one of those. I still have it. I still remember them telling the story about how it was just like St. Paul when he saw all his idols, and there was one to be unknown God. And it was like real life that people were still worshiping God. Instead of idol of rat, we worship this rat.
Yeah, they can worship what they want, I guess.
Well,
Yeah, I was talking this morning, the Minnesota Mission Society was started by some of the ladies, my mother and others in the St. Cloud Church, who had made contact with a man from India,
that's just more.
Manoa, and so they had started supporting him, and then talked it up with the other churches in the state, and that became the Minnesota Mission Society, State Mission Society.
What about locally though?
Minneapolis, I know, has periodically gone door to door in the neighborhood, handing out little pamphlets and brochures and things to bring people in. And then we always, every year, we have we get inflatables and
Pre-COVID.
pre-COVID, yeah, we'd get these bouncing.
Getting our distinctive truths out, like these ladies would take pamphlets and go to the library and put them in there, or take them to the car shop, they said, they would take them and leave it there so people could read it and get in touch if they wanted. Today we have more opportunity.
Yeah,
Well, it's all mostly electronic today.
Right, so we should be doing it all the time.
One thing I know, when my mother-in-law was the pastor's wife at King Valley Church of God, she had release time classes for children from school, and she also had junior choir. And when she came back and lived with us, the remaining years of her life and was going to King Valley, the great-grandmother would say, oh, she made me get up in the junior choir and really sit out. And then a great-grandfather would say, I had her for those strong classes. So that was missionary, that was outreach. And also, I believe there was Sister Ruby Railton and Sister Fair going around doing Bible schools. This is when I was very, very little. And they called them all Auntie. I mean, up here it's Auntie, you know how I say. And they would go around in Bible schools, and Bible stories for children. And that is evangelistic. And those people are still in the church, in the faith. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was one of those that was released on the actually us in the church and school.
Oh.
We got all the school to go to the police. That's where I learned to remember the system Bible. Because we live on the
Okay.
and also that knowledge in the Bible system. And that's where I learned about scripture. That's what
And my sister, we went there, and there one summer, they went out east, and she picked up a rocking chair, so that a child rocking chair.
But it just brings mom.
Yes.
I remember, kid, Grandma Hilton, Nickel Hilton, was kind of the matriarch of I can't remember who was candidating for the pastorship. But I remember my dad asking her, so, Mom, what do you think? And her answer was, well, you know Gilbert Jones or Ray Brown. What happened to them today?
Ray Brown died
Yeah, Ray Brown did.
That was it also.
Yeah.
young.
Yeah, that was pastor in Long Island, California, where he started out. And Ray went to a number of places to pastor at the end of Nova Scotia.
You guys didn't know.
Ray's wife, and I followed her recently, she was very active in the church in Texas.
Oh.
In children's ministry.
And so was her daughter.
Yeah,
She married
their
her
daughter
daughter.
is retired.
She just retired. She worked in children's ministries.
But did they candidate to issue the great honor or on the ground?
I don't know.
Probably from conferences. Ray Brown stayed at our house one time during the ministry conference. And he pulled out pictures. He said, I have a little boy and a little girl close to your age. I was in the teenage years. That's the first time I saw the pictures. That she got to know them.
After May died, Doris came to the state of Ohio, and she became a Christian director on True Church and all kinds of stuff, all the years I was growing up.
That was a little bit. Is there a church in
Big Fork. I think there was one in Big Fork at one time. Mary. A prominent family in the Minneapolis church was Joe and Thea Goldberg, who started going from when we were at the Colfax place. And I'd like to have Mary just say a few words about their insistence and whatever drove them to attend the early years at the Colfax Church.
Originally Nancy started going to church, and then when I was about 5, I started attending with her, and then we got our parents to attend it.
a little child?
Did you all hear that?
We just lived about a block away.
Yeah, her folks lived about a block away from the Colfax Church, and her older sister started attending the church, and then dragged Mary along. And then they talked to their parents, and then the parents started coming, and they were saying, "And a child shall lead them." And Joe and Thea were very, very dedicated attendees and participants supporting the church there, and their family has continued to this day as we keep expanding. Right, Sierra? Just got married. Sierra just got married, and she and her husband attend regularly also. So.
On a regular basis was if there was a cousin's baby or whatever, she brought them to baby class and she brought them Wednesday night baby class, and I got to be the Sky Plus teacher, and their family was and I also was not the Plus teacher when we had over at the parsonage, and we had our classroom was the breezeway.
Oh,
There were
okay.
3 doors in it, so every time somebody came in and out, they had to stand up and let them through and go back to our houses. So that was one of the really good church there. But Nancy was really good about it. She brought Ashley and Sky and just, if there was any little kid, she'd bring them to Sunday school and she'd bring them to church. I remember Ashley saying, I wish I could live at church.
Bill, one of the things that occurred to me while Paul was having devotions this morning, showing the pictures back, Jerry Cooper was young pastor, there were some really young people in the church that developed a bond that continued throughout their lifetimes. My mother was in that age group, and Gabe's mother. It was remarkable that they grew up together, shared with one another, married, but continued this friendship. And there's a special bond, probably and hopefully, among us today, too, that kind of transcends some of the other relationships you have in the world. But there's that special bond together. And it's beautiful seeing those pictures of them as kids, knowing that when they died, they were still strong friends.
Right.
That friendship. I remember my mother telling me, they moved to Litchfield after the Depression, they lost their farm, and that sort of thing. And we only worked at that time as bullet mills in Litchfield. And a lot of those young people they grew up with came to Litchfield, and they would stay with my grandmother, and some would work the day shift, some worked the night shift. Mom said that the ones who worked the day shift sleep in the bed at night, and then the night shift go home, sleep in those same beds while those people went to work. So they were like brothers and sisters.
Yeah, close knit, very close knit. It's very interesting, thank
I
you.
wouldn't want to do
Well, probably not without changing the sheets.
it.
Well, one thing that, I'm looking through all this and how close they were, and they spent almost, I was there on the side, the church, and the churches, and just doing things together. But everybody was staying in their own community, and the kids didn't grow up and leave, they stayed close in the vicinity, so they were able to be friends.
There's a song that our Sunday school goes with every morning, and I couldn't figure out why. I finally did a little history on it, a small town. But Mercy's not. Mercy's not.
Location.
Where did that come from? I meant, well, where it was from Brian's quote that he used. I looked back in the Brian book, and so we still use that. Most people don't buy.
Yeah, the state Brians, I remember, used to get together about once a month, and they'd have like a roller skating party or something else where we would get together at the different churches, and then you'd go out and do something, and then you'd spend the night and go to church there the next day. And when I get home, Mother said, "Oh, where'd you stay?" And I'd say, "Oh, so and so's." "Oh, your second cousin." I said, "What?" So it was interesting. I did build a lot of friendships, for the Berean activities that we used to have. We're supposed to be done 2 minutes ago.
Thanks, Dad.
That's okay, we'll keep you. I'll claim you yet. Anyway, I want to thank all the participants and responders.